Hey guys, it's Chris again with another review. This is of the Scott Scale 29er, a bike that I've had for 2 years and I am thoroughly impressed. I'd recommend it to everybody. It's the same deal as the ones produced this year in 2013, except there's a different color scheme, but don't fret. It's the same money and it's the same componentry. So, when I was picking out a beginner bike for myself, I had a lot of trouble. I didn't know which ones were good for the money, I didn't know which ones were reliable. This review is intended solely for you to figure out what kind of bike you want. Be it this one or another one, I'm going to tell you all the perks of the Scott Scale 29er and all the details that you'll need to figure out what bike you need. Alright, so the first thing you want to assess when you're getting a bike is your height. If you're 6 feet like me, you can fall to either side, medium or large. I'd suggest a large if you think you're going to keep growing. A medium would probably be recommendable if you're done growing, because eventually you're going to shrink anyway, so you'll fit right in. Secondly, you need to assess your skill level. If you're a beginner, this bike will be great for you. You probably have 2 years until you're an intermediate rider, and if you're an avid biker, and that's a good lifespan for a bike. If you're an intermediate rider and you think that you're going to be getting better, then buy a full suspension bike. This is going to break. It's not made for expert trails. This is pretty unfortunate because the bike appeals to a younger crowd of mountain bikers. And when you're young, you bridge the gap in between beginner and intermediate in like 2 years. It's quick. The difference between those two levels is the terrain that you're riding. And the difference in between intermediate and expert is how well you ride it. So when you're a beginner, you can be anywhere from dirt roads to paved roads, and when you're an intermediate, you can be anywhere from paved roads to expert tracks. It all depends. Unfortunately, this bike is only really intended for people who are intermediate and people who are going to stay intermediate and not push themselves any farther. Because it being an aluminum hardtail, it's gonna break if you drop a ledge bigger than 10 feet or you goof up. So it's not worth it. Like me, I bought it when I was a beginner. It's lasted well. I've outgrown it. My skill level's too high for it now. But if you think that you're not going to be advancing very fast, then this is the bike for you. So let's start talking about the bike. The handlebars. They're great. The handlebars themselves are nice. They're a little bit shorter than the models for 2013, but they're well shaped. The concave works nicely. The brakes are Tektro Duracos. They work great. They squeak a little bit in the rain, but they're always functional. You can stop on a dime. They're low expense, which is nice, and they're hydraulic, which means that they're much more reliable than cable. Like, the cable can't stretch, the cable can't snap, so they're always on point. Another perk of these brakes is that they're self-adjusting, so if you squeeze the lever 5 times fast, the calipers in the brake unit will automatically surround the rotor more effectively. Secondly, you have the gear shifters. They're Shimano's, nothing to talk about really. They're reliable, they're chic, they're nice, they're waterproof as far as I know. But water wouldn't damage them anyway. They work nice, never had a problem with them. You also have a short mountain biking stem, which granted, if your mountain biking is nice. If you're planning to adapt this to a road bike, you're going to need to change the stem. Over here in the back, we have the Tektro brake unit. Here there's 2 calipers that surround the rotor. The nice thing about having disc brakes is 1, the cable doesn't stretch like I mentioned, and 2, you can just pull the wheel right out, no complications. You have a SLX Shimano derailleur, works great, have no problems with it. It's not very durable. If you hit a rock, it's going to break, but it's really hard to avoid that. It's just a problem that all mountain bikers face eventually. Near the bottom bracket, I have a bash guard there that doesn't come with the bike. I would recommend it because, if you hit your gears on a rock, you're screwed. You won't be able to go anywhere. This is pretty bad. Hopefully you're not out there and get eaten by a bear or something. So buy a bash guard so you don't get eaten by a bear. The crankset is nice. They're Shimano's. Nothing really to talk about. Nothing too bad. When you're buying a bike like this in intermediate, I would get clipless pedals. I don't have mine on now, but I would definitely recommend it. Keeps your feet on the pedals, works nicely. So this alloy frame is awesome. This is the best part about the bike. 1, it's cheaper than carbon fiber by a long shot. 2, it's much more durable. 3, yes, granted it can rust, but if you cover the scratches with nail polish, it's just as rust-proof as carbon fiber. If you're a beginner, you want an alloy frame. Why? Because if you goof up on a jump, if you land wrong, if you land sideways, it's not going to snap. Your wheels might bend, but you can't do anything about that. At least you're not going to get, seriously injured, and the bike frame will be fine. If you have a carbon fiber bike and you land sideways, it's going to splinter, it's going to break, and you can't repair it. So stick with aluminum. Maybe, you want to go a little higher tech later, but for now, this is good stuff. And it's light. It's not like, oh, aluminum's light or aluminum's heavy and this carbon fiber stuff is light as a feather. It's not like that. Carbon fiber's light, but the difference really isn't noticeable if you're a beginner. So up here with the seat, it's a Scott seat. It's nice and thin for racing. If you're a casual rider, if you're a beginner, you might want to change it out. But if you're racing, other seats are going to do a job on your inner thighs, whereas this is pretty safe with regards to bruising and chafing. So men, you'll appreciate that. The seat post is nice. It is susceptible to rust, so make sure that you keep a good eye on it. Another thing to be forewarned about is that the seat post entry is the only place where water can get into the bike. This can cause internal rusting. That's bad. You can't tell when it happens. Just don't let it happen. So what you want to do is, if your seat post breaks, if you lose your seat post, cover the opening with something. Use saran wrap, use a rock. I have no idea. But, that's vital. Don't get water in your frame. And you are able to drain it out. It's not like you're doomed, but it's a hassle, it's not fun, and if you see brown water coming out, that means that you have rust in your bike, and that's dangerous. So, unless you're a redneck, keep that in mind. So the front fork is a SR Sun Tour 100mm spring-loaded shock. It works great, doesn't rust. I'd recommend it for all people who are into cross-country riding. If you're going to be doing drops, which I wouldn't recommend on this bike anyway, invest in some new shocks. Your head's going to hit the handlebars if you do a big enough jump, because you're going to max this thing out in an instant. Not worth a head injury. Trust me. But other than that, it's good. When you take them apart, it's easy to figure out where everything goes. Pretty simple design. The only thing I'd like to mention, just for your safety, is to remember that you shouldn't put grease on the stanchions, the part that moves in and out of the bottom piece. It accumulates in the body, and eventually it just builds up, and it is nasty, dude. If you open it up after maybe 3 years of lubricating the stanchions, all you're gonna see is just a pile of like brown pudding and what looks like that. It's just gross. You don't want that. So don't lubricate the stanchions. It doesn't help anyway. The linkage in between the steerer tube and the fork is good. So when you're turning the handlebars, it's always responsive. And the dropout at the bottom where the quick release goes is good. Doesn't wear it down. That is, capable of rusting, but that doesn't really matter. Alright, thank you so much for listening to my review. I hope you learned a lot about the bike. If you have any questions, just inbox me. Yeah, I don't really have a catchphrase like most people say at the end of their videos, so stay thirsty, my friends.